Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. I am really excited to show you what I did with this one. So let me first do a quick overview of what materials we're going to use today. Starting with some plywood, and we're also going to use some jewelry wire, some tweezers, 2 types of glue, and some beautiful embroidery thread and gold string. Now, I don't want to tell you too much about this idea, but I will just mention right now that it was inspired by a visit to Westminster Abbey in London. And it's something I actually hadn't tried before, so I hope you like it. Alright, so let's talk about this project, and I will show you very briefly how I came up with the design. This is a file I made with all the pony shapes. So what I did here was I pasted some original art from Generation 1 My Little Pony, because I need to add the hair. So we're going to do this very quickly. Basically vectorize the new hair, add some lines, make sure everything is set up correctly, and then send it to the laser engraver. We are going to eventually change the colors, but for the purpose of drawing, I'll just use black and gray. Black for the thick lines and gray for the details. And I did consider drawing this hair myself. I did try, actually. It didn't look that good. And then I thought, well, we have the original art. Maybe it's okay if we borrow some of it for this project, so it's a bit more consistent with the style of the time. So for the mane, we're going to do exactly the same, using a different model because I didn't like the way it looked with the collector's pose. Which reminds me, actually, I haven't really talked at all about the ponies and the pose. But collector's pose is basically the year 1, the original pose. Here you can see me wondering, what did I do? And then spending some time trying to fix these to make things easy and simple. This is the result. So all we need to do now is just make sure everything is in the right colors, so it's easier to prepare for engraving, clean some details, add some cut lines, and bring everything into the Falcon design space. This is the software that comes with the machine, and it's really easy to use because first, it's easier to see what the different lines will do, the different colors like engraving or cutting. And second, the materials screen is amazing because you already select like plywood 3mm, and then everything is already set up for that machine, for that material. Since I was going to engrave this pony, I decided to also add a couple more just for keychains or earrings or something. They will all be on the Etsy if you want to adopt them. Now, I have been talking to Creality a lot because they have really been supporting this idea, half of the makerspace. So they offer me to try one of their new machines. And I am so happy, and I want to tell you about it. This time I recruited Mum to open the box. Here's our reaction. Wow. This is the Creality Falcon A1 Pro. Tommy also joined us, and then John joined us, so it was a family activity. I was very surprised though, because there was actually nothing really to set up, just connect a few things, and the machine was kind of already built in the box. It was a great feeling, because I'm always scared of putting things together, so... I'll mention a couple of things that I love about this new machine. This chain, the super robotic Martian 40K style chain, I love it. And also the tray is really cool, and there is a screen that you can attach to the machine, and the fact that it's compact, and the fact that it's very quiet. So thank you, Creality, for supporting the channel and allowing me to do these things, and for having such awesome representatives. Like I mentioned many times, I would never recommend something I don't personally love. And one example of how incredible the team is, that I have some problems with the software. I wasn't sure because I was trying to use Lightburn to try some things, and I chatted with them and they immediately sent me like the software, the drivers, that they helped me set up things correctly. And this was all in seconds. I didn't have to like open a ticket and wait forever. And the machine itself is just incredible. I had tried the Falcon 2 before, and I said, oh, I'm never gonna love any machine more than this. And actually, I think this A1 Pro is the love of my life in terms of technology, because John is the love of my life. As you can see here, I did one pass for like the outline, a second pass for the details, and the third pass is going to be the cutting of the shapes. This is the result of the first test I did for the big pony. We will look at this closer soon, but I also wanted to show you the result of the tiny pony's. I know I could have fitted more into this sheet, but I'm just, I don't know why I didn't. I'm not throwing away anything though, so there will be lots more earrings like this. One more thing I wanted to try was the infrared laser. You can swap the 20 watt for this 2 watt infrared and work on different metals. even gold and silver. In this case, we're just going to work on aluminium, and I thought I would add a little extra to the pony we're going to be making. So as you can see, it's really easy to replace it. It's plug and play, and it has the same function that the other one has. There is an autofocus that is really good, and the framing. The autofocus, it basically calculates the thickness of the material, and like I had mentioned, the software already also comes with all the materials, almost all the materials you can find online. So the only thing I had to do was pick the color and then, well, I did the autofocus and I did the framing, and I ran 2 tests in blue and in pink. You'll see the pink one soon. And then once I was confident in my own settings, I went for the actual thing that we're going to add to the end of the pony. The end of the pony, the end of the video. Oh, and I also wanted to try what things were like using USB for the things we did before, but also connecting the computer. And obviously connecting the computer is much easier because you can frame and move things and test. I am very, very happy with the quality of the engravings done with the two, with both of them actually. Like I said, I love this machine so much, and the autofocus is such a time saver. So the fact that you can do this from the touchscreen on for the computer is really, really cool. The whole way things are designed too is really safe, both the enclosure and the lasers themselves. And I really want to try gold and silver, but aluminium will do for now. This is what I engraved for this project. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the video that the inspiration for this project was Westminster Abbey in London. It's kind of a vague inspiration because there isn't a specific object I was thinking about. I was just thinking of medieval times, a very broad period, tapestries and gold paint, and this gold thread or string. And there were some items in the gift shop that really got my attention. They were like Christmas decorations, and they are all made with like filigrane. Like, imagine medieval clothes, very, very rich clothes, like Tudor period capes and Elizabethan dresses. I will show you what I mean, but before I jump into that, the history lesson of the day, I just wanted to tell you what I'm going to do, like manually, what you're going to see. And my first idea was, okay, let's do a thicker edge for the hair. I'm pausing because I realized 2 things. First, that I ended up doing an edge for the whole pony, but I started with the hair and I used double thread for the bigger lines. But I also initially used super glue, and this wasn't a good idea. I thought super glue should glue everything, right? But it wasn't working very well. As you can see here, maybe it's been absorbed by the wood, maybe it doesn't dry in time, but it was actually also removing some of the gold color from the thread, which was very scary, especially at this point where it had just started. So I switched to fabric glue. First, I used some leftovers I had from the beginning of the channel. Then I switched to the one I actually sell now as part of the rehairing kits. And I will jump ahead a little bit here just to show you the reason why I really love this glue and why I recommend it compared to others. By the way, this is me doing the double thread and using these little hobby tweezer scissors thingies. They work really well for this thread, not so well for the thread we're going to use after. This here is the glue I was talking about. You can find it on the Etsy. And here you can see why I love it. It's because it has this little applicator. And not just that, but when you put the tip back on the glue, it has another metal pin that keeps it unblocked. It is a little fiddly, you can see here, but it is a great feature. For all of these parts, the outer edges of the hair, I'm going to use double thread, like I said. Then for the details, single, and then we're going to do another double for the whole figure. My only advice here, and I'm sure there are lots of people that will share others in the comments, because this is, I was improvising, I was not sure what I was doing here, but I realized that after you put the thread in place, if you put a little droplet of glue at each end, that really helps with the stability. I was also working right next to a fan, and I noticed that the glue does dry relatively fast. So if you hold it in place for maybe like 5-10 seconds, that's usually enough to keep the shape. I didn't want to do any hard, what's it called, like hard angles, very acute angles. So I used different pieces of thread. I'm sure there is also a better way to do this. Oh yeah, and another very important tip, if you use fabric glue, it doesn't stick to your fingers in the same way the super glue does. It's really easy to take it off. It's sort of like PVA glue, but it works really well for fabrics and for pony hair. Right, so I should probably wait for the next section to begin before I start telling you about the inspiration behind this project, but I think I'm gonna start now. Mom is visiting and we went to London a few days ago. And one of the places I've always wanted to see, but I had never had enough money to get into, was Westminster Abbey. Now, this abbey is old, very old. Just to give you an example, the first coronation happened in this abbey in 1066, at least the first documented one. That was for William the Conqueror. The church obviously didn't look like this at the time, but it has been in constant use for over 1,000 years. During all of those years, of course, there have been coronations and there have been weddings and events. I could talk about this for hours, and honestly, every time I say this, someone says, oh yeah, go ahead and talk. I have no limits. So I will try to be brief and tell you why I wanted to go to this place so much, what was the main thing that I wanted to see. Actually, the section is almost over, so let's do a transition. And look at the golden thread, mostly done. The parts of the hair at least. But let's finish this and I will tell you what I wanted to see the most. And during these seconds, you can also think, if you knew there were 17, I think, monarchs buried here, who would you want to see? I told my mom about almost each of them so she could choose. I bet she was having lots of fun. All right, next step, the thread. For the next step, I decided to use some of this embroidery thread because I love it. I use it a lot. You probably saw it, a little stringy that I use for the ponies I rehair. And it's really strong. I also have a lot of colors I don't plan on using for other projects at the moment. So yeah, let's start with some yellow. Just don't get attached to what I'm doing right here because it will change, but you will see it in the future. So if I show you the future without showing you this part, it won't make any sense. But I started doing something and I didn't like it. But this gives me the perfect chance to talk about my favorite one of my favorite monarchs, top 5. Okay, I will give you 3 hints as to who this person was, this monarch, British monarch. I will read them as if I was this person. So, clue 1. By the age of 11, I could already speak 5 languages. Clue number 2. I loved sweets, especially candied violets. They made my teeth black though. And clue number 3. I had flaming red hair. Now, do you know who I'm talking about? It is Elizabeth I. Now, when talking about any monarchs, I think it's not really fair to ask, was this person a good king or queen? Oh, well, fair is not the word. I mean, it's not really something you can answer with yes or no. So when I think about the history of this country and I feel like I need to make a judgment, I would say, was this reign stable? Was this reign tolerant? Was there an interest in culture? And on the other hand, we'll have, was this a cruel reign or was there persecution? And I also like to look at who came before and who followed. And I think it's impossible to think about Elizabeth without considering who her father was and her siblings as well, her sister especially. And before I forget, I should mention that the reason why I chose the gold and yellow is because of this portrait. This is from around 1600. We don't know the author and it shows a young Elizabeth and it is a coronation portrait. Now, this is the interesting part and where we link back to Westminster Abbey. The crown she's wearing was previously worn by Mary. Now, while we complete this section of the hair, I will tell you as briefly as I can about Elizabeth, Mary, the Tudors, etc. I want to be brief but also respectful, so let's see how I can do this. In the 16th century, we had Henry VIII as the king. The king eventually had 6 wives, but only 3 kids. Sorry, 3 legitimate kids that survived past infancy. They were Edward, Mary, and Elizabeth. When Henry died, his son Edward, who was a Protestant, became king. He was only 9 years old. He didn't rule for very long. He died when he was 15. So then the throne went to Mary. Now, Mary was the daughter of Henry and Catherine of Aragon. Like her mom, who had been Henry's first wife, she was a devout Catholic. She tried to restore Catholicism in England. That didn't go too well. She ended up hurting a lot of people and she earned the name Bloody Mary. Her reign was very short, also 5 years. And she died without any kids in 1558. Now, as you might know, Henry VIII was obsessed with having a male heir, as many men before him and many after. But the throne then went to, yes, Elizabeth. You can imagine, after so many years of religious conflict, she did not have an easy job ahead of her. And yet, during the time of her reign, England flourished in arts and culture and exploration. She was a brilliant politician. She was incredibly skilled at maintaining her independence. I think both Mary and Elizabeth had very challenging circumstances and life thrown at them. Lots of people ask, were they enemies? Were they rivals? I would say it's more complicated than that because they were siblings. I think they weren't openly hostile, but there was a lot of tension. For example, Mary had accused Elizabeth of being implicated in a rebellion, and she was imprisoned. Elizabeth was imprisoned in the Tower of London for a year almost, and that is an experience that she could never forget. And eventually, Mary did not have children, so she had to accept Elizabeth as a successor. Now, this I didn't know this. I don't know why, but I didn't know that the tombs of Elizabeth and Mary that I knew were in Westminster Abbey are actually one and the same. We went into the church. There was a lot of people because this is like peak summer weekend, everything at the same time. And we were following like a queue of people. We were all going at the same rhythm, you know. And I finally see the sign because it's one of the last stops. Mary and Elizabeth tomb this way. And we follow, and there is just one tomb, one mausoleum. And it says, partners in throne and grave, here rest two sisters, Elizabeth and Mary, in the hope of resurrection. Mary is like at the bottom, Elizabeth is on top, and the tomb was made by James I, who was Elizabeth's successor. I was not expecting this, and I still find it, I don't know, so strange. Predictable in a way, but also so strange. I mean, at least they're not both buried under Henry, because Henry is not in Westminster Abbey. Anyway, this was my, super brief overview of Mary and Elizabeth. And we are about to finish this part of the project. We are almost done with the yellow. Now, I had to choose a color for, like a secondary color for this. And this is where we will talk about the Tudors and Tudor fashion. Because, there is still a lot to say. My original selection of threads was not very good, but luckily I remember I had this very cheap collection I got from some shop. And now came the very difficult decision of what secondary color should we use. A few months ago, I think, I was listening to this incredible podcast called Not Only the Tudors. There is one episode that is about Tudor fashion, and it's about the different colors that were used, the different materials. Oh yeah, here is where we are removing this because I don't like it anymore, but we are not going back to the body yet. We're going to work on the hair. Tudor fashion. We know some things about Tudor fashion, a lot of it actually because of paintings of the time. Some of it because of lists of materials that were purchased by the crown, for example. There aren't really many pieces left. There aren't that many portraits either, but from what we can see, Tudor fashion was rich in like fabrics and different silhouettes and colors, especially colors. And one of those colors we can see sometimes that I think is incredibly beautiful, and I think the royals agreed, is purple, or well, Tyrian purple. At the time of the Tudors and Elizabeth, purple dye was really, really expensive and very difficult to make because it came from a type of sea snail. Well, not necessarily sea snails at the time. There were other ways to create this color, but it was still quite costly. So it was associated with like royalty, nobility and power. And even Elizabeth, she was known for using color as a way of expressing like certain messages, especially in the portraits she chose to make and send. Now, yellow is a bit more complicated interpreting the potential meaning of yellow at the time. It was generally seen as a joyful color, but because we're talking about Elizabeth and Henry, there are some things that are interesting about wearing yellow, because the day after Anne Boleyn, who was Elizabeth's mom, was executed, Henry wore yellow, and his next wife also appeared in yellow at court. Now, in Spain, or in the Spanish tradition, so Catherine's tradition, the first wife of Henry, yellow was a mourning color, but in England it was not usually. So were they celebrating, were they mourning? And since Anne was Elizabeth's mom, was she trying to communicate something by wearing yellow in the portrait I showed you before? I guess we will never know. But when I had to choose two colors, I felt that yellow and purple were a good combination because of the colors themselves, and also potentially because of some of these other implications or relationships. All right, I think that might be enough for now about the Tudors. I was going to maybe say a little more about the clothes, but I really recommend that podcast episode. The whole podcast is amazing. We will finish gluing some of this thread, and then I had to think for a while what I was going to do with the body. And what I realized is that I actually like the color of the wood a lot, so I would try to imitate that. In the next section you will also see a bit of the work I did on the eye, but let's move to what comes next. While considering what to do here, I went through a few options. A lot of them included hairy fabrics that could imitate the pony's hair. Decided not to go for that. Some carpet material, too thick. And yeah, I just went back to the embroidery thread that we used for the hair. Now, when you look at some older tapestries, you can see that the thread is sometimes embroidered not in lines but in roundy bits and triangular bits and irregular shapes. So instead of just doing lines up and down or side to side, I decided to add some little circles, kind of like the Van Gogh pony, but in thread and not really, and then connect them with the thread. This ended up being lots of work, so I won't show you the whole process because it will take forever. It took hours and hours. Luckily, I was listening to a really good book. If you like crime, fictional crime, this was Lisa Joel's None of This Is True, really good. I will also leave the link behind because you never know who is looking for some book recommendations. And yeah, I just threaded and made roundy things and connected them and cut them. In the middle of that, and because it was so warm and I was a bit overwhelmed, I started working on the eyes. I used some of this like jewelry flexible wire, just because I didn't want the thread to then sunk the eye, if it makes sense. But we're going to do some things to this afterwards. But I did glue these with the super glue. This time the super glue did work. For the rest of the eye, we're going to use some paint, I think. You will see it when it's done because I haven't done it yet. But we are approaching the end, so I thought I will tell you a couple of things about tapestries in the times of Elizabeth. You can tell I'm really enjoying this opportunity to talk about these things. We're almost done. Now, tapestries had always been used for decoration, and I think sometimes for like protecting houses from draft. But obviously, for Elizabeth, being such a political maneuveree, they were an opportunity to let visitors know things. Now imagine you are a bachelor looking for a good, positioned, wealthy, famous bride, and you come to see Elizabeth. And I mean, you could be a noble or you could be an envoy, but you'll come into this room and it's all filled with tapestries, and the tapestries are depicting Elizabeth as a divine figure surrounded by, you know, all her power and her resources, and, you know, appearance was power in during this time. So if you could overwhelm someone with grandeur, that could be very beneficial, especially if you convince everyone you are not gonna be single forever. Okay, I hope you didn't mind that history detour or pre-planned wonder. I just want to say thank you to our patrons who are incredibly patient and help me be able to make videos like this. I have another surprise coming for you very soon. Okay. And now it's time to look at the results. While off screen, I worked a little bit on the eyes and I added some tiny jewels. I was very tempted to add a lot more golden thread, but I think for a first project, we should breathe, stop, and evaluate what we have achieved and what else we can do. I have lots and lots of ideas, but I also have some restorations to go back to. Like I mentioned before, if you want to buy your own wooden ponies, you can now on Etsy, and I would love to see what you come up with, because there is so much you can do with this. You can glue things to it, you can paint them, and of course you don't have to use mine. I mean, in general, there is so much potential here. So I hope you enjoyed this little project. Please let me know what you thought, and thank you again, Creality, for your support. If you're interested in lasers, please check the links below, and I will see you very soon with a restoration this time. So have a great week, and bye-bye. Bye-bye.